So, a little while ago, I watched the first season of The Three-Body Problem on Netflix. And that set me to thinking. And the thing it set me to thinking about was the Fermi Paradox. Now, this is a question that was asked by physicist Fermi in 1950. There aren't any sort of direct quotes of exactly what was said, but he was having a discussion with some fellow academics about the lack or apparent lack of extraterrestrial life in the rest of the universe. So the Fermi Paradox questions why, if there should indeed be lots of other alien civilizations out there, why do we not hear from them? Why have we not detected them? Why have they not introduced themselves by this point? And I found the three-body problem interesting in the sense that, and there will be spoilers for this, so I would turn away now if you don't want to be spoiled for the three-body problem. The initial premise of that show is that it is possible that life could exist in a system that is not at all hospitable for life, in which case the lifetime of that civilization is very, very small potentially. Or it's small, but they can rebuild, but they rebuild very slowly after they've been knocked back each time, which means that it would take them a lot longer than it's taken us in a stable system to achieve the same level of technological development. So, coming back to the Fermi Paradox, the question you have to ask yourself, I suppose, is, if there are other civilizations out there, why have we not heard about them? And for me, I think it all comes down to a question of timing. In the three-body problem, it's explained fairly clearly that it's going to take a long time for the aliens in question to travel to us, because they're doing it at slower than light speeds, broadly speaking. Now, that logic also applies to communications between star systems. So it takes a year for a radio transmission to travel a light year. So it would take 4 years for a perfectly directed radio message to get from us to, say, Proxima Centauri, which is one of our nearest star systems. Now, assuming that they detected that message, it would then take 4 years for a response to come back to us, if we were listening in the right direction to hear it, or see it, or however else they did it, basically. And so I was thinking, well, what happens if someone transmitted to us for a relatively short period of time and we were prehistoric? Well, we'd miss it. And if you think about the period of time during which we have had the ability to send out reasonably strong radio waves, it's a tiny, tiny fraction of the Earth's life. So, that being the case, there are only potentially going to be these tiny little windows of overlap where another civilization has been broadcasting and we'd have been sufficiently sophisticated to actually receive it at our end. You'd only stand a decent chance of receiving something if a civilization had been broadcasting it non-stop for, hundreds of thousands of years, let's say. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm just sort of hypothesizing here, but all sorts of things can also bend signals in space. So, gravity will act as a sort of a lensing mechanism or a diversionary mechanism. So, even if someone sent a signal in our direction, there's probably no guarantee that we definitely receive it, that it wouldn't be blocked or just not be powerful enough to reach us full stop. So, I wondered then whether or not the Fermi Paradox is actually a paradox, because really it comes down to dumb luck. And I'm going to channel Star Trek. In Star Trek, the Enterprise is often zipping about the place at faster than light speeds and finding civilizations that do not have warp drive capabilities. So they're more primitive than the Federation to which Earth belongs in the Star Trek universe. Now, if you can go faster than light, then yes, you could bump into other civilizations, clearly, much more easily than would otherwise be the case. But your own travel time is not necessarily insignificant, depending on how much faster than light you can actually go, assuming that's even possible, which is debatable. So that means that if everyone is restricted to slower than light travel, then all we can really do is wait for signals to arrive. And we're assuming here that civilizations ever actually last long enough to get to a point where they could transmit signals over a long period of time. Because as I say, in Star Trek, everyone is sort of miraculously more or less on the same level in terms of the more sophisticated civilizations. But I thought to myself, what are the actual odds of that happening? That there isn't someone in your immediate vicinity who's vastly more advanced than you are, who just goes around and tramples on everyone else as soon as they get faster than light tech, because they don't want you developing to the point where you could be a danger to them. Now, that might explain the end of some civilizations, of course. If you have first contact prematurely and it goes hostile, you're dead. And sadly, in the current state of the world, all I seem to be seeing is negativity on the news at the moment. So it could be environmental, it could be war, it could be an asteroid hitting the Earth, it could be, the sun knocking us back into the Stone Age because it kills all our satellites. It could be any number of things to depress you on an already dreary day, as today has been. So, the risk, as in the three-body problem, the risk that you could get knocked back before you achieve a steady state of civilization that can actually survive long enough to send out signals for long enough to be picked up by somebody else. That to me would seem to be a very logical explanation for why in the very short time we've had the ability to scan for extraterrestrial signals, we simply haven't seen any. Because we may not be in existence at the right period of time for any to sort of wash past us. Because other civilizations could be stopping and starting and stopping and starting and really struggling. And maybe no one has ever been stable enough or sophisticated enough to get to the point where they can just keep going. And maybe when they do get to that point, they say, hang on a minute, we don't actually want anybody knowing that we're around. So we're going to mask our signals. We're going to keep all of our signals shielded and planetary and not interplanetary because we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. So I think that's a good theory as well, that a sufficiently sophisticated planet might choose not to announce itself. That's a possibility. I mean, obviously, we've sent probes out with fairly sort of optimistic messages saying, hello, this is us, this is who we are, this is where we come from, who are you? Which is lovely, apart from the fact that it kind of presupposes that other people want to get along with you. If they don't want to get along with you, there are any number of ways in which they could throw something at you that's big enough to take your planet out, unless, of course, you develop something in the meantime that can respond to that. And, I think that unless you fall very, very lucky, I don't see that any of us can reasonably expect to actually detect something from an alien species that is at about our level of sophistication at any point during our lifetimes. Because what are the odds of that? Even if you assume that there are plenty of civilizations out there, time is probably has to be the greatest blocker here, because you have to be around at exactly the right time, and they have to be around at exactly the right time in the vast span of time that we've already had in the universe for us to actually detect one another. So I do just wonder about that as a concept. Maybe it's not a paradox, maybe it's just that we haven't gotten lucky enough yet. It's not very scientific, I know, but I wonder if there is actually a way to define that scientifically, because there must be any number of events that could knock a civilization back. I mean, what if a civilization for some reason never develops into a complex life form? There could still be other worlds with life on them. Of course there could be. But their ability to build great big radio telescopes and the like is going to be fairly seriously limited if all they've got is amoeba hands. That's not gonna work, is it? So I'd be really interested to hear from properly scientific people on this, because I don't see how we can know right now, given our level of technology, and be confident that there categorically isn't anyone out there. Because I just think that the odds seem very, very long at the moment that we would actually be able to figure that out, unless we could send a huge number of probes out there at a faster than light rate of travel, which could then somehow transmit back to us at faster than light, in order that we would have some chance to actually have that information back with us during our lifetimes. I don't know. It seems to be a really sort of strange one. And as I say, I think that maybe if you get past a certain level of sophistication, you're at greater risk of destroying yourself, or having someone else to destroy you so that you don't become an enemy. And then you just hide yourself away after that. You build a mega structure and you lurk inside that evermore, and you don't let anyone else know what you're about. It's a really, really interesting question. And it's a strange idea to me personally, because I've always been a science fiction fan. And oftentimes, science fiction does, of course, involve meeting aliens or having aliens come to meet you. But I just went across this train of thought, and I just thought, well, but what are the odds of that? What are the odds of you meeting an alien species at a time when they wouldn't be able to completely trample on you? Because you're just and even then, what are the odds of that happening at all? Because you'd have to have things happening at exactly the right time to stand any chance of actually crossing paths with each other. I'm going to close with a passage from a book that I read when I was fairly little, really, which is, of course, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And chapter 8 tells us that the foreword to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy goes something like this. Space, it says, is big. Really big. You just wouldn't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space. Listen, and so on. So, Douglas Adams probably had it right. Space is big. And time is long. And we're not really very good at thinking in large terms about either, I don't think. Because we're very short-lived human beings. So maybe we'll get lucky during our lifetimes. Maybe we won't. But I'd be interested to see if anyone can come up with any logic to to sort of support that idea. Because of course the only civilization was, we've seen empires rise and fall. Roman civilization, I guess if you look at that as a subset of civilization on our own planet, we know civilizations can die out, but of course they do tend to be then supplanted by whoever had a hand in helping them die out. So I don't know if there is any way to measure the average length of a civilization, or the odds of one lasting once it's gotten to a certain level of technology, but we have the doomsday clock and all that sort of stuff. So let me know in the comments what you think. Cheers for now.